We're going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Sirianni. I was a bit surprised by this. So Eagles win the Super Bowl, not that, but the fact that they gave Nick Sirianni a multi-year extension, terms undisclosed, and it just feels like a bit of irrational. Like, okay, they won the Super Bowl. Remember, last year, Sirianni went into the season and battled because of all the stuff that happened on the sidelines and some of the reports. Obviously, Sirianni's been very successful as a head coach in the regular season and in the postseason for sure. Are you surprised that he got this big of an extension?
Yeah, I've never been able to figure out. Philadelphia is run like a chaotic organization, but it all works. They fire coaches who win Super Bowls a couple of years after. They'll move off Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. I mean, Chip Kelly had a winning record, gone. Doug Peterson, Super Bowl, out of here. It is an organization run by its owner and its general manager. And there's not a lot of those left in the NFL. This is a general manager run franchise, Howie Roseman. And he and Chip had a power struggle. He got demoted, Chip rose, eventually Chip got the axe. So I think Sirianni works well with Howie Roseman, and that's why he got the deal.
I mean, again, you could go down the list of the reasons the Eagles were successful last year. I don't think Sirianni's top three, maybe not top four. I mean, it's like tush push, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, obviously that addition, the defense in the Super Bowl, like the offensive line's great. Like, I don't know that Sirianni's a great coach. Obviously, he has a Super Bowl. He should be called a great coach. But when you think of great coaches in the NFL, is he like a top five guy that comes to mind?
No, he's not. He's unconventional. Sometimes on the sidelines, he's more like it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I also think we have to be fair. There are people in all industries that grow into jobs. I think he's better today than he was 3 years ago. I still think sometimes he goes, off the rails. But I think he's grown with the job. I mean, he's certainly much better at the podium than he was. He was a tire fire 3 years ago. So I think, I think a lot of this stuff, we tend to look at the NFL and we want a superstar quarterback and a genius GM. A lot of this stuff, though, Les Snead and McVay are very collaborative. That's why it works. And I think Nick Sirianni, Chip Kelly had his vision, and he didn't need Howie Roseman breathing down his neck, so it didn't work.
Yeah.
Andy Reid and Brett Veach work very well together. I think Ballard and why am I forgetting? Yeah. I think they like each other, respect each other, and work well together. I think the collaboration's the key. I think when you have Trent Baalke, he couldn't work with any coach. I think Harbaugh works with the Chargers because they've given Jim his pick of the GM and his pick of the staff. So there's a rock star in every organization in this league. It's often the quarterback in Buffalo. It's not the coach. Sean McDermott's not the rock star. It's Josh Allen. In Kansas City, it's Reid and Mahomes, right? They share it. And I think in Philadelphia, it's the general manager.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Dallas, it's the owner, and it doesn't work.
It's almost like Hurts and Sirianni have had a rocky relationship.
No question.
Maybe Rockies. Is that too harsh?
No, it's been published. There's multiple reports out of Philadelphia.
And like they have a new offensive coordinator every year. So Sirianni does deserve credit for galvanizing the troops, right? Getting everybody on the same page. But I still think he's got work to do. Now, the terms not being disclosed is interesting. Obviously, we'll see if it's a 2-year deal or whatever it is.
Guys. Okay. They said they moved on, from a Super Bowl winning coach, Doug Peterson. How well did Doug Peterson then go on to do with the Jacksonville Jaguars? Not so good. They moved on from Nick Foles. Philadelphia Eagles fans love Nick Foles, statue of him, understandably so. What did Nick Foles do when he moved on from Philadelphia? Nothing. So those seems to be two very smart moves that a lot of teams who get stuck in neutral, who just go in circles, who are just stuck in mud, who continue year after year after year embarrassing themselves, keep those types of situations. That's something like the Dallas Cowboys do, the New York Giants, the Baltimore Ravens. Just going to say it. The Baltimore Ravens going round and round and round and round and round. And they keep going through coordinators because their coordinators keep getting head coaching jobs. Because they're so good at hiring these coaches and putting them in positions to succeed and win. And then you're like, well, I give credit to the O-line and the defensive line and the quarterback and the wide receivers and the tight end. Oh, so you give credit to the team? I get that. I do. I really do. I get that. I understand that Sirianni doesn't have the impact on the offense and wins as much as like an Andy Reid, or, we can even continue with the Eagles, the Fangio and that defense. I get that. And I will always be a fan of having a coach who is really the true coordinator, the play caller, right? Like I will always favor that over not, because then you're not as much at the mercy of when you lose your coordinator. Someone tried to be like, oh, well, the Patriots, they lost their defensive coordinator and they were still able to make a Super Bowl. And it's like, are we serious here, guys? Do we not know this? When you're Bill Belichick, your coordinator means nothing. Your defensive coordinator is just there to follow whatever the heck Bill says to do. That's how that works. Andy Reid's offensive coordinators are just there to do whatever the heck Andy Reid says to do. Like, that's how that works. And that is not how it works for the Philadelphia Eagles. But it is still a collaborative back and forth. We even saw that on the Super Bowl with Kellen Moore and Sirianni for the throw to Devontae. So it's a more collaborative relationship. It's not just 100% hands off. Like it's a conversation. So it's a more interesting dynamic, but a dynamic that clearly worked. That clearly worked because it's led to multiple Super Bowls. And I agree. I do believe that probably many Philadelphia Eagles fans believe that, it's Howie Roseman, right? Like they say, in Howie we trust, or whatever. This is how we do it, or whatever. And they're not necessarily saying that about Nick Sirianni, but I do know that Eagles fans do really love Sirianni. But like, Sirianni has earned the right, multi-year deal. It's not like it was like a 10-year, $100 million contract here. So it could be like a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, which again doesn't ever mean that it has to even finish out that way. But like, Sirianni has deserved the right to be the coach for at least another couple of years. I mean, I think that's obvious. And if we want to keep going in circles and talk about, he had a bad press conference, his first press conference, it's like, what are we doing here? Like, how many times are we going to rehash that? It's like throwing snowballs at Santa Claus. Like, get over it. What are we doing here? This is like, it's absurd. It's like being happily married and be like, yeah, but you did get divorced 20 years ago. It's like, okay, that was 20 years ago. Like I was a different person. It was the wrong marriage. We separated, like, what do you, like, what you want? Why do we have to keep talking? I have a whole family, wife and kids. Like, who cares? Yeah, remember when you milk came out your nose in middle school? It's like, yeah, that was like 40 years ago. Why are you talking? Like, who cares? Like, it's just absurd to keep going in circles about the past like that. Nick Sirianni, since that press conference, has now gone to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. He's graduated from that. I think it's okay. And it doesn't mean that Sirianni now doesn't ever deserve to never be on the hot seat again. And he will be if the Eagles struggle. That's what has made the Eagles consistently great for the last 25 years. But you compare them, who's operated with a tremendous amount of stability or superficial, stability. Again, the Bills. The Ravens. Let's see. I guess technically the Cowboys. I mean, they give their their coaches, incredibly long runways. I mean, we can go through all these other teams and they're not winning. They're just not. So I just think it's kind of an absurd statement to make, quite frankly. And this whole idea of like, oh, Nick Sirianni, like they wanted to get rid of him. Well, then why didn't they? People were screaming to fire Nick Sirianni at the end of 2023. I was one of them. I said, move on from Sirianni. I was shocked that they didn't. But then I was kind of like, well, this is the thing, though, then. they're obviously keeping him. And then when they struggled a little bit, they're like, oh, Sirianni's gone. He's going to be gone by Thanksgiving. At the bye, Colin was calling for him to get fired and then bring in Bill Belichick. That's why Bill Belichick hasn't signed with another team yet, because he knows that the Eagles, blah, 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 blah. None of that ended up being true. None of it. So just because the media felt one way doesn't mean it's true. And again, to have the confidence in your own take to make it feel, when it was proven wrong, that it was still a reality. If you had inside information, I could understand, but that's not what the take was. Again, I thought Nick Sirianni should have been fired in 23. Ended up being wrong. I'm not Howie Roseman. I'm not Jeffrey Lurie. You're welcome, Eagles fans, that I'm not the GM. You're welcome. You owe me a debt of gratitude. If I was, they're not winning Super Bowls. So it just, it is what it is. You need to have a team run the way how you envision it to be run. And if Sirianni fits that, because the team is allowed to bring in great coordinators, have a amazing top GM, an owner who's willing to put out all the money, etc., well, then Sirianni fits that role. He fits, he fits that piece in this championship winning franchise. That makes sense. Whereas maybe if you brought in a Harbaugh or you brought in a Ben Johnson, you don't necessarily have that. And again, those guys haven't won a Super Bowl. Those guys haven't gone to multiple Super Bowls. And I was one of the people that said, oh, move on from Nick Sirianni and go get Harbaugh. And I don't even think that would necessarily be bad, but it is interesting when you think about it. Well, how would Howie Roseman and Harbaugh exist? Would that not work? And the reality is that Howie Roseman has proven to be a significantly better GM than like a Harbaugh and an unproven Ben Johnson. Because again, like, you do have coaches that really want to pick, and that is why, Andy Reid has a tremendous amount of power in terms of like who goes, who stays, who do you sign, who do you draft. I understand that the Chiefs have their own GM, but like you could even see when Andy Reid signed that contract, like it was even embedded, like Andy Reid wanted the power. And so I believe that there's some collaboration, no doubt, but it still all stops and starts with Andy Reid. And let's not pretend like there's just a whole bunch of Andy Reids to go around. Shanahan doesn't have that talent. Not so convinced McVay necessarily has that talent. Sean McDermott, Harbaugh, like I don't see it. And so you're at the mercy of your GM. And if your GM is brilliant, like, so it's just these things change and morph over time, honestly. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know why a contract like this is considered surprising. Would it be surprising if they said 10 years, $100 million? Yeah, that would be surprising. I would be like, okay, that's a lot. And I do think that even with Sirianni going to 2 Super Bowls, if he has 2 seasons where the Eagles come up short, right? This coming season, things just don't look right. They can't ever really regain the momentum that they had last season. They lose the division, but they get in the wild card round, but then they lose the first round. And then the second year, things are getting off to a weird start again, and it's just not looking right, and et cetera, et cetera. But then, yeah, I believe that Sirianni will be on the hot seat. That is how the Eagles operate. You win, you stay. You lose, you go home. And it's been that way that has kept the Eagles have the second most popular. I don't even want to say second, because it should be first. We don't count the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. They're such an outlier. They got 30 playoff wins, and the Eagles, I think, got 20. And they're second. So in the normal world, the Eagles have been the leading team for the last 25 years. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it's because they constantly are like, you win, you stay. You lose, adios. That's how this works. Jalen Hurts over the next couple of years has 2 down years. Yeah, they'll be having conversations of like, all right, did we get the most we got out of Jalen Hurts now? Are we moving on? That is how it works. They're not going to keep paying Dak. The Eagles aren't the team where they're going to keep paying Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott. Like, they're not going to keep playing that song and dance. They're not going to have Micah grab them and force their hand. They're not going to let a Brandon Ayuk. They're not going to, keep trying to run it back with Jimmy Garoppolo. They're not going to just keep letting Sean McDermott drop the ball. Harbaugh drop the ball. They're not going to do that. The Eagles do not do that. Which is why they've been more successful in the modern era of the NFL since essentially the late 90s than any of these other franchises. That's just an indisputable fact. And when you point to any of these other previous franchises with success, it was literally since before AOL was even invented. And oftentimes, it was because of very specific coach-quarterback combo. It was a very specific time for that franchise where they were able to rip off a bunch of wins. And that's where they were able to, juice their Super Bowl total, which again, credit to them. That's awesome. But then as soon as that ended, they haven't done it. They haven't gotten there. Then you have the Eagles franchise who's been able to prove that they could win multiple Super Bowls with completely different rosters, with completely different coaching staffs. I've not seen the Kansas City Chiefs do that. I've not seen the 49ers do that. I've not seen the Bills do that. I've not seen the Ravens do that. I've not seen the Rams do that. I've not seen the Cowboys do that. I've not seen a single team do what the Eagles have simply just done. It's pretty remarkable. So, to say that you're shocked by anything that they do, wake up. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Nick Sirianni getting a multi-year extension with the Philadelphia Eagles? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.